Hey guys, raixorSchmaixor here once again, and I made some probably final changes to the build. We are now sitting at 150 million DPS, and I want to take this chance to go over every piece of gear and talk about the stats on them, why they are there, and what you could upgrade in the future, as well as the final changes to achieve this much DPS. Alright, since I had really good gear already, I could drop Purity of Elements and swap in Hatred for that, which increases our damage by 22%, which is pretty crazy. Getting rid of Purity means that you have to get Freeze immunity, Chill immunity, and Shock immunity. We can't really get Ignite immunity, but that's also not that big of a problem since we have Recoup, which regens like 4k life per second, right? So to get the Freeze immunity, we are actually now using Brine King with the Cannot Be Frozen. I swapped to some different boots with Chill immunity. And as we can see here on the boots, we also get 35% chance to avoid being shocked. And we stack that with Jewel implicits. I have some more percent on the survival secrets and some of the other jewels, right? But in total I get over 100%, so I'm immune to shock, I'm immune to freeze and chill. So we can drop the Purity of Elements since I have pretty good gear and I don't need the resistance, even though I'm still quite a bit overcapped. Now, some more changes I made. I bought a pretty expensive Omniscience for I think 55x. It's pretty much perfect for the build. I could get one more int and a bit more Hatred effect, but yeah. There weren't any out there. And I made some changes to the tree again. Basically just some optimizing. One thing I copied from another guy on the Discord is a Unnatural Instinct in here. This gem grants us all bonuses of unallocated small passives in the radius, right? And Balbala, or the Anti-Brutal Restraint, grants all these little nodes for dexterity. So this node alone here gives us something like 80 dex in total, which is why this is such a big DPS increase. Right, this jewel alone is 15% more DPS, and after I got this jewel I could get rid of some points that I had in here and in here, and that pretty much freed up points to grab these nodes up here. The crit multi is just way too strong, and the the instacking is also even stronger now that I have even more dexterity from Unnatural Instinct. I also swapped to a Skin of the Lords back from my old. I had like a +4 chest, but the chest with Awakened Early Focus is actually already stronger. Now I want to quickly go over all this stuff that I put in the configuration tab and why it's here, and why we actually have even a bit more DPS than I currently have on here. So we generate power charges through Stormrider, through our cluster jewel. In theory, we mostly always have frenzy charges up, so this brings us to even I could practically always tick the frenzy charges, since we pretty much always have them in any relevant content. Like in simulacrums, there are always mobs that we kill. We just mostly don't have them during like Sirus or single guardian fights or something like that, which is why I leave it unticked all the time. Now we obviously have Onslaught, Tailwind, Flask. We have crit recently. Okay, so let's get to the lines down here. The first line is just in here to simulate the cast rate on cooldown, right? If I take that off, then PoB thinks we cast our spells ourselves, but we actually always proc them on cooldown, and it kind of caps at the cooldown cast rate, so this is just the workaround you have to make. Then we have 100% chance to inflict cold exposure from our gloves, and I found this in someone else's PoB, the 2% extra pen. I'm not quite sure if that's actually true, since the elementalist node applies an extra 20%, and I'm not quite sure if those extra 20% are then added to the 10% regular exposure, so like 10 to 30, or if it's and these 2% just get lost, or if it's like this applies 12% and then we get 20 extra on that. So maybe we have to take that out, I'm not quite sure. But anyways, it wouldn't change the DPS much, right? Just 1 million. Now, we always have 30% effect on Bone Chill, since our Freezing Pulse just hits incredibly hard. What else? Obviously the enemy is chilled, most are even frozen, but that doesn't change anything. Shock, why do we have 22%? So first of all, we always get 10% shocks because of elementalist, as long as we have any lightning damage. And then we have 40% increased here, so that brings us to 14. And then another 30 here, which brings us to 17. And then another 5 or 50% here, which brings us to 22%. Yeah, unnerved and consecrated ground and cold exposure should all be obvious. Okay, so now where could we make even more upgrades? Now for the helmet, I still have freezing pulse just because I never bothered getting anything else. Obviously Ice Spear would probably be best in slot, which brings us to 158 million, or Righteous Fire grants more damage would also be a pretty good choice. On the chest we could get a +4 with the correct colors, which would look something like this. And then we could stack stun avoidance on jewels, just like I did with the shock avoidance, and we could reach stun immunity, so we could even drop Unwavering Stance, or we could just spend 2 points and drop 2 nodes somewhere else. Before I forget, the mods on the helmet are pretty much perfect. You can't really get much better than this. You could get more resistance, but we don't need it anyways. On the gloves, we could actually get quite a bit more stats, like 20 stats more, but I haven't bothered yet and I probably won't anymore. On the boots, you could in theory get attributes from crafting with a Veiled Chaos Orb or with Eiling T4, but that's some optimization that I won't do anymore. Our Omniscience is pretty much best in slot. We could only get really small increases there. Same with the Hotbound Loop. Now my Onslaught Ring, I could get like 20 stats more. We could also sacrifice the Onslaught for a % increased stat, like Strength or Dex or Int, which would give us even more damage. The belt is pretty much done. I guess you could get better stats and you could get a Hunter belt with life and life %, which would allow us to drop 1 or 2 life points and spend them on damage. So that's kind of a roundabout damage upgrade. Now the jewel is pretty much perfect. You could get better implicits, but that's about it. And I think that's pretty much it. You can't really get much better gear than this anymore, I think. But there are probably some ways to optimize that I'm not thinking about yet. Right, so I'm quickly gonna put on everything for the max DPS that I could in theory reach with my build without making even more changes. So Ice Spear and better colors on the chest, right? And an unnerved belt and more attributes on there. Am I missing anything? Yeah, I think that's about it. So I guess we could in theory reach almost 200 million DPS. Probably there are probably more changes that I'm not thinking about yet. Oh right, we could, I guess, increase the level of this one by 1%. Wow, that's actually crazy DPS upgrade. I think I'm gonna get a 21 Vaal Righteous Fire then. That's way too good. Oh right, one thing I forgot is I put in Culling Strike in the Freezing Pulse setup, basically because Culling Strike, we didn't have Culling Strike before, and that's pretty much a 10% more multiplier, right? As you always then kill mobs with 10% life left, so that's straight up a 10% more, or even 11% more multiplier. So I've made a Discord, and in there's one guy that has a pretty min-maxed elementalist version of the build. He's using Volatile Death and some spells, and he actually reaches 200 million DPS, which is insane in my opinion. So I'll be linking that in the description as well, but he has like really crazy gear, even better than mine. So yeah. have fun with that. Maybe you can find some inspiration from there. Alright, I think that's about it for this video. In the description is the newly created Discord. And now I'll quickly show you a Sirus and a Maven kill with the 150 million DPS setup. Thanks for watching, and until next time.